What's up, everyone? Anthony DiGiovanni for SacredU Philosophy here again with another video today. Special type of video. We're going to interview someone, and that special guest is Taylor Symmank. He's a current NFL free agent. He's been on a few teams already, and we're just going to take some time to get to know him and get to know what he stands for and get to see how he's incorporating the sacredness of his own life and everything we try to talk about on the channel. All right, so if you guys are ready, we'll get that popping. All right, so Taylor, welcome, man.
How's it going, man?
Good. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
So give me a little bit of a intro onto who you are and people watching as well. How did you get here? How did you get here?
To where I'm at in life right now?
Yeah.
Oh.
Take us there, that route real quick.
Okay. I'll try to keep it somewhat short. Let's see.
So
I grew up in the McKinney area. So grew up in a great family, brother, sister. I'm the oldest. And played, I guess I'll preface with this. Played just recently, been with a couple NFL teams now. And so that's kind of where I'll be going. So I'm going to backtrack now. So grew up playing sports, all kinds of sports. Whether it was basketball, football, I even did hip hop, dance. I did everything, right? Family wanted me to do basically as much as I could because my grandfather was a strength coach for the Cowboys back in the day. Won a couple of Super Bowls, so that was always kind of the dream growing up, right? And so he wanted me to do. I mean, he was kind of a next generation thinker. So we did like some fencing, like it was just different, right? But for me, over time, those attributes that I would be learning from those other sports was kind of what it was all about for me. And as I segue into it, what I learned over, I guess, through high school, through college, was taking things from each thing I was doing and constantly applying it, right? And so kind of just going back to my story, I started out in playing receiver. That's what I wanted to do. Then I went to kicking and punting just because I could do it, right? And then as I went to the next school, it was trying to do both. Then they were afraid that I would get hurt, so on. And then I moved on to the NFL as far as, okay, I was with, I guess, 10 different teams now. And it's kind of it's just a little bit. I know we're going to touch a lot on it, but just kind of where it comes from.
That's awesome. That's interesting that you touched on how you were, well, it's cool. I didn't know that about, was your grandpa that was a strength? Okay, that's cool. I didn't know that. But that's interesting that he was, in the way that it's a next level thinking, trying to get you to incorporate all tricks and trades that you've learned across the medium of the myriad of like different things you were doing, right, and incorporate them in every single one. And let's talk about that because I listened to this, I was listening to a podcast, I mean, this was a while ago, but I heard, you may not know this, the top 5 running backs of all time in the NFL, all of them, Emmitt Smith, I think LT's up there. I love this. This gets me fired up. So all of them are, on average, about 6 foot or less. On average, about 200 pounds or less. On average, run about 4.7s. I mean, these aren't for non-athletes. These aren't the fastest, biggest, strongest dudes, but they're the top 5 running backs of all time. Right. And what it was getting at, what the stat was getting at, was that I think we're starting to see, or maybe as we get older, we start to realize, like, it doesn't take a freak in whatever it is, whether you're a businessman or a salesman, whatever you're trying to do. It doesn't take the freak numbers, the freak athlete in that sense. It just takes someone that's kind of like a jack of all trades, which sometimes has a negative term. It just takes someone who's good enough at all things to get by. And so, do you feel like that was you with how you were brought up and the way you incorporate? I feel like that was you.
Right. So like what I've realized over time, like the separation between good and great is literally like 1%. Yeah. And that's basically what you're alluding to, is like this. A lot of it's mindset and the way of thinking, but it's the consistency that they do it is one, and like that's what I found as a separator is someone that's consistent over time. They consider him the GOAT, right? It's like the greatest of all time. It's like he's been consistently good year after year after year over X amount of years. Tom Brady, I mean, 20 whatever seasons it is, consistently at the top, and that you consider him the greatest. But if he was only good for one season, you have, what's his name? The guy from the Raiders, that quarterback that was like 1 year best drafted. Was it Russell? What's his?
You're not talking about Carr.
No. Before that, played at LSU, big quarterback, huge. Jamarcus Russell.
Oh yeah.
So like guys like that, like he was a tangible athlete. Like he was gifted athletically, like probably better than most. Yeah. And Yet Tom Brady, drafted, 6th or 7th round, is considered the greatest of all time. So there's certain things that make the greats great, and it's not necessarily just one factor. No. Which, if you look at someone like, oh yeah, he's got like 80% chance of winning. But at that level, it's all about percentages. Right. So that's awesome.
That's great. Well, so how do you, this kind of segues into my next question, but how do you feel like that type of mentality towards talent, towards attributes that you've gained helped you for, I mean, let's not joke around, like you've been a part of the highest level of a sport, and how do you feel like that helped you get there, helped you while you were in it, you know, like, is that part of it? Does it even matter in the NFL? Like
with the mindset stuff, or?
Well, the mindset of like, I'm going to take pieces of everything that I've learned and kind of be a jack of all trades bodily, you know, like physiologically. Does that help at that level? Like,
yeah, I think more so it's the mindset of it. So like every situation I'm stepping into, I'm going to grab something from it. So if I'm going to a game or a different scenario, it's because if you grab something from every situation, you become a quick learner. Yeah. And at that level, you only get maybe one chance, if not the only chance you get is that one. Yeah. So it's learning from all the practices or things like that, and not having to wait for that big moment to be like, oh, I should have been prepared for that. Right. But now it's like, oh, I've been like, okay, I gotta fix this. You're just always constantly growing, and that's kind of what it is. It's the mindset trigger of I'm gaining all these things from things I'm doing, but it's the thought of, okay, I'm being aware of everything I'm stepping into and what I'm taking away from it. Yeah. So I think it's more of that. That way you can you learn from your situation. Therefore, when you are asked to perform, you're beyond ready.
I mean, yeah, I feel like it's not something that's gonna be fancy or pretty or like be the cover of a book, but like so much of it is mental, and everyone says that, and we get told that as athletes, and bringing it back to life, I feel like it's the same thing. A lot of the reason why I wanted to do this page was because I saw people struggling with having a positive mentality and having a strong mind, and yeah, but it's not pretty. It's not what
it's far from pretty. Actually, kind of going on the mindset deal is a lot of followers on social media and things like that have been asking questions about mindset stuff, and so I've been working on some things dealing with that, because I kind of went through my own little spiel. Because as soon as I graduated college in 2015, I got hurt my senior year, missed 5 games, like in the climax of the year. So at the beginning of the season, I was basically number 1 in the country for the stats of being a kicker and punter, and then after the 5 games, was basically it just couldn't keep up. So what happens is every year for the kicker and punter, there's a reward, and you have to have a certain amount of punts to even be qualified. Well, since I missed 5 games, I couldn't even qualify for that, which usually every year in the draft, they maybe draft 1 or 2 punters or kickers. So you have to kind of be on that list. So with that, it kind of hurt my chances. A lot of teams were second guessing when I went into the draft. So it was kind of like just a hard time, right? And so I've worked dang near 22 years at the time, all those years to like this one defining moment. And then when you're like, okay, I literally have to, because I had to go back home after that. I went to 2 teams, both of them said, one was like, oh, you need surgery, otherwise we can't, and they weren't going to pay for it. So I had to pay for it, and I was like,
what was the injury? Was it
It was my hip flexor.
Oh, okay.
So then they weren't going to pay for that there, and then went to another team, like, we don't know if you're going to be healthy. I'm like, I'm here, I'm doing what you're asking. I mean, nothing's a problem. So I had to wait another year. The same team that called me out that previous year, I went and played with the Vikings. And so it was crazy, but that first year, it was like a place I did not want to be. So like before I left for college, my thing was don't ever come back home. Because like for me, that was like a sense of failure. Not that I moved with my parents, but it was like if I make the league, then I won't be home. So it was like don't come home, don't get like a normal random job. That was like my thing. And then with that happening, I was like I have nowhere else to go. I have to go home, train for another year. But it was like ultra like just wanted to sleep all day, didn't want to face the world type deal. So I totally understand the mindset stuff. And so I was like, when a lot of people were asking me on social media, I was like, I guess I've never talked about it, but I've been through the mess of it. And so I totally understand that. And that's really what kind of helped me shape, I mean, I guess who I am in a sense, because there's a lot of beliefs I had, a lot of things I didn't know about that once all that came up front, hit me all at once. Because at the time I lose a big dream. The girl I was dating, we decided not to go anymore. So literally it was like everything. I was like, everything that matters is gone.
Yes, always does that, right?
Right, and so I was like, literally within a week of each other.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is like ridiculous. I'm going home, like all three trades were like, all right, you have nothing to hang my hat on, right? And so for me, that was performance. Was like, I gotta, perform, do something. And I was like, I have nothing to show for myself, right? And I had 4 years to prove something. And so I go home and go through all this. And so I had to basically start from ground zero of like, what I thought didn't necessarily line up the way I played it out in my head, and certain beliefs didn't line up. So I kind of started from the scratch and like kind of built my way. And so that's what I'm trying to share with a lot of people on social, just because I was there.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people are, I feel like. Every day I see it with the kids I teach and coach, and they're in that hole. Well, that perfectly segues into what I wanted to ask you next, which is about some of the adversities you faced trying to chase this dream, this aspiration of being in the NFL. That's obviously a huge one. So the one thing I want to ask you about that is like, what was it like when you were in that hole? You were in the cave. That's what I call it, the cave. When you talk more about that, have you heard of the cave of Adullam with David in the Bible?
Oh yeah.
When he's in the cave.
Yeah.
Okay, that's everybody goes through that cave moment. You're in the cave there. But when you were there, like right at the bottom, you said you wanted to sleep all day. Like what was it that motivated you to start? You said you had to start from scratch, but what was the motivation to start? Like some people don't even have that,
That's a great question.
Yeah, you might need a minute, but
yeah, no, I think it's a fantastic question because it's different for everybody. And the one thing I've kind of found is if I had to pick one word, it's hunger. But the hunger for each person is different. But for me, I was always a legacy guy. Like I was always, whether it was at school, whether it was at whatever, I wanted to leave the place and give a role model for someone else to follow behind me. So at that point, it was like, I don't have anything. And so for me, it was more of, because I'm a man of faith. So I view it as like heaven gifted me with an investment, right? And so like heaven invested in me, and I want to return that investment, and not let it go void, right? I want to have it multiply, do something. And so for me, it's like, I have gifts. God has invested in me. What am I going to do with it? And it was more of like a question of, I got to figure something out. I'm almost like, I don't want the investment to be wasted. So it's like almost, because not even just in my faith, people, in college, there were so many people that went out of their way to help me. Just help me to do what I need to do. People that just poured into me, whether it was knowledge and stuff like that. I was like, if I just give up, I'm letting everyone down, not just me. So I had to get outside of myself, I guess would be the answer for that, is I had to make the picture bigger. So in those moments, what we do is we isolate, right? Even physically, we'll push ourselves in the corner. I'll go in my bed and go into the covers and not want to wake up. And I'm by myself. I don't want to go outside the house. That's what we do. So what I tell people is when that starts to happen, you have to know that's a mental trigger. Okay, I got to deal with something. Because we're meant to be with people, and as soon as we try to attract, something's going on. Same way in relationships. As soon as they try sucking you away, it's probably not going to be good, right? And so it's just getting the picture bigger, I think, is the one answer to where getting it off yourself. Because as soon as selfishness is the root to so many different things, right? As soon as we can get it off ourselves and get on other people of what we're here to do, then it kind of stems or starts that motivation for you in a sense that maybe, because the circumstance is not going to change. And that's what we have to understand. Because for me, it was I'll change when the circumstance changes. Well, in all reality, because there's a whole stem way, we go on this, but the power of thought, you can create a circumstance before it happens, right? In your mind, you can perceive and believe a certain way, and then your circumstance will slowly start to change on the outside. But if it doesn't change from the inside, you have no chance. Because now you're at the jurisdiction of someone else. Yeah. Oh, here you go. No one's going to give you a handout. That's what I realized. I was waiting for someone to give me a handout. Hey, here, do this, do this, do this. And but that is though, it's here, read this book. Read it, and I'm trying to fix the symptoms instead of the issue.
Right.
And then
which is the heart.
Right. And so for me, I guess to kind of answer that question would be, you just got to get the picture bigger, find your why. But yeah,
I like that. Is there any other obstacles via that road? That's obviously a huge moment for you. Is there any other obstacles that you feel like facing down? I mean, was it a dream of yours to play in the NFL?
So like at age 12, I decided I wanted to play. I wrote it down. I still have a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I wrote down all my goals for basically life, and that was on there. Now, like I said, I wanted to play receiver growing up. Like that was the thing. I invested all my time into that. Like I didn't really kick much. I just could do except play soccer and whatever. So all my time was invested in playing receiver. And then once I realized I was 150 in white and graduating high school, I was like, this is going to be very hard. And I wasn't fast at the time. I was like running like a 4.7, and I get my junior year of college, I get to be like 195, 4.4, and I'm like, what? Where was this?
Yeah.
Like when I needed it.
That's awesome.
So it's just, for me, it was that realization of, okay, this is what I got to do, and I had to make that choice, which that was another obstacle in itself, because the mindset was different. It was like going from just super intense to playing golf. Like it was like I didn't know how to cope for the first year or so, and so it was a real mental shift, because I couldn't be like, you can't be super hyped and punt a football or like super hyped and like swing a club and hit it consistently every time. So I had to change the way I thought about football.
The game, yeah.
Yeah, because like the training was different. It wasn't as intense. And so it was just, and one, I didn't really want to do it. Like you kind of, with kicking and punting as the viewpoint of like non-athletic, you're just pushed to the side, like just, can you even run over the hurdle? Like, that kind of thing. And so for me, it was like, okay, I got to use all these gifts I have playing receiver and focusing on that to help me make me a better specialist. And also like keeping the same intensity of training while being like specializing my training to just that.
Right.
But no, it was a hard transition there. But I think for me, it was just like, you always go back to the mindset. Because my goal was to play in the NFL. So I was like, okay, that's my goal. Like you hear all the time, like the goal, like when you write a goal or a vision, it's not just straight path, like check mark list.
Right.
It's all over the place. And so I had to adjust. I was like, well, everybody I talked to, all these coaches and things, like you have a chance to, like, you could play. Obviously keep growing and whatever. And so I was like, well, is it either go to the NFL or take a chance and go to a D2 school and work my way up? So at that point, I was just like, I want to play in the NFL, so let's adapt and just move. And so that's what I did. But yeah.
That's awesome. That's so funny. I can't believe we've never talked about this, because it's essentially the same story for me. As a deep snapper, I was a quarterback in high school. And
okay, yeah.
My senior year, played tight end, because again, I was too slow and white. But my dad was my coach, and he literally said those words to me. He's like, "Dude, you're too slow and white." Like, I was.
That's great.
So, but I moved to tight end. I loved to do. I was the first team all district tight end, and then like you see, mine. I don't think was. I mean, the NFL was like, a thing for every football player, but for me, it was more. My dad was a coach at TCU in the 90s. Oh, wow. And so I grew up around that world. I grew up around it's a different level of Division I. Yeah. And that was my dream. I would literally have dreams of like being at practice. That's, I don't even like football that much, but I would have dreams in high school, like, just like the nerves of, now it's your time, you're on. And right. So it was a literal dream of mine, but my dad, again, kind of blatantly honest, came to me and he's like, dude, you say you want this, you're too slow to play quarterback. You're too white to play quarterback. You're also not big enough to play Division I tight end. You're 6'2", like good luck. But he's like, I know you can throw, so just throw upside down. And he brought out a camera, brought out a ball, and one day after practice, we just filmed me snapping. And a few schools got back and said you could walk on, try a scholarship, and I picked UNT. Anyway, what I'm getting at though, kind of like how you had to go through that, it was a completely different process. Yeah. And game day was different. Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing I tell everybody, and I think you'll probably agree to this, is that it was if I could sum it all up, it was humbling. Oh, it was becoming a specialist is humbling. So bad, and that's where it was nice, like, because the only way I could prove myself was in the training. Right. Like we're running sprints, we're like lifting, like that was the only way I could show my athleticism. Yep. It wasn't like, oh yeah, because like people walk by, you the punter? I'm like, yeah. Well, you're automatically judged. Yeah. So I totally understand. Yeah. It was the most humbling, and then like I was the backup snapper, so it's like that's the lowest of low. Like my first year at Tech, I was a red shirt, and so like when people ask, right, it's like, what do you do? I'm the punter, and I was like, do you start? I'm like, it's the lowest. Like you try to get rid of it, right? And so you're like, well, the guy in front of you, like you try to make up something, right? And so
No, I totally understand.
Yeah. Segueing more away from football now into like real life stuff. This is a question that I'm trying to figure out. My page is trying to figure out. In your own words, maybe you need a moment to think about this, but in your own words, what is the essential? Now, let me start this way. I get asked a lot, like, how do you be a good person? Like, how do you be a good? What does it mean to be a good human, right? And there's a lot of ways you can answer that. Well, the way I look at it is you have to first answer what is it that a person is meant to do. Because like when you ask that same question for a cup, what does it mean to be a good cup? Well, a cup is something that holds its contents without spilling and without leaking, right? It's based in experience, it's based on action.
Right.
Well, then what does it mean to be a good person? Like, and I guess the question that's kind of hidden in there is, in your words, in your mind, what is the underlying task / experience that we as humans are supposed to live out? In your own terms, your own words. I know this is a biggie.
Beautiful question.
Thank you.
I think the first step in that obviously is defining your purpose within that, right? And now that's different for everybody. But I think to answer more suited the question of like at the broad scale, I think, let me put it, see if I can word it in a short little sentence. Okay, first I think just the reason for being here is we're here for people, right? Because we can only live, like we're meant to pass things on, right? So think about just death in general. Think about the way everything operates. You can't take money, you can't take anything, you can't take fame, you can't take family members, you can't carry on anything. So it's about literally making the most, and like going back to the investment example I gave you earlier, it's like we've been given an investment that we can't take the reward with us, so we have to make that reward count while we're here. So it's different for everybody, like I said, but it's about making the most of the time, the opportunities to do as much as possible while we're here. And I think for everybody, they have a unique set of skills, they have a unique set of just things that make them, but utilizing those to make it, first off, there's a lot of different ways you can answer that, because you want to enjoy life at the same time while also having a purpose and a mission of it. But I think, like for the vast majority of people, it's just when you can get a vision that's bigger than yourself and like truly change or make the world a better place. It kind of answers a lot of times your purpose, your calling, while at the same time keeping you fulfilled throughout your life that you have. I hope that kind of answers that way.
Essentially, put it other ways, that's what I come to too. It's that conscious engagement every day of what, moving forward. So
right, because it's got to involve people, I think, no matter what. Just because if it's just you at the top, first off, it's lonely. Like it's great because the whole thing of like this movement right now is like, okay, just grind, and then what that happens is we grind in a tunnel, and then we get to the top. There's no one to share with, and now we're upset.
Yeah.
And so it's just about, you get the work's required. Like that's not going to change. Right. But it's about having a hand to bring people up with you. So
it's good. Everything you've said, everything that is Taylor that you've showed today, displayed throughout your life, where does that come from? Where does your motivation come from?
Yeah.
Because you're a pretty highly motivated guy. You try to help other people be motivated. So where's that at? Where's that core?
Yeah.
Where's that come from?
I think I would be wrong for not saying a lot of it has to do with how my parents raised me and who I've been around. Without that, I don't know where I would be, honestly. And obviously my faith is involved in that as well. But I think I've been so lucky or blessed, however you want to say it, to have the family that I have. That's like grandparents, cousins, like the whole bit. And so for me, that's kind of where my motivation comes from. Like I was one of the blessed or lucky ones to get put in a great environment from a young age. Well, that would be a disservice to not only me, but to everybody else that didn't get that.
Yep.
So for me, I got to capitalize on it because I was one of the lucky ones that got to be brought up in a safe environment, got to be brought up in a place where it was like constantly pushing me to be better and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's the thing that motivates me. Is like, I was the lucky one. Like from the beginning, I got put in a good family. Like a lot of people don't get that good of a bid. Yeah. Like they're alone, they don't have anybody, like family leaves, like there's that people. So I got to capitalize on what I've been given. So I'm so thankful. That's what kind of it's kind of created me and made me who I am. One, obviously, and then two, like I said, my faith. That's kind of been, that's just the rock, and that's kind of where the constant like perspective on life, one, as well as the viewpoints and disciplines and things like that kind of come from. It just gave me a viewpoint of how to see life, how to orchestrate myself through situations and circumstances. And then I think a lot of it is, there's been so many people, that's what's hard. Like, I don't want to spend so much time there, but there's so many people in my life that just invested in me. Like, whether it was, hey, Taylor, I just want to tell you whatever it was. Like, in that moment, there's so many people that would do that. Like, hey, you have something that you're called to do, or I believe you could do, like, just whatever it was. There's little moments that almost in the moment may have seemed like insignificant. Oh, that's cool, thank you. But like looking back, I'm like, that shaped the way I thought about something or belief I had in myself. Like, everybody believed in me around me, so it made it really easy to believe in myself from a young age. Now, as I got older and I kind of stopped believing in myself, when I went back to those dark days or whatever, I started to question certain beliefs of why did I how to get to this place? That's the question I asked. I was like, how did I get to where I am? The good things and the bad things. Like, why am I in this place in a negative way, as well as why am I here in a positive way? Like, what did I do right to get here? And so I started asking myself that question, and a lot of these things came up, like beliefs, things that people instilled in me. Like, when I think about, like, when I would fail at something, like, what did my parents say? What did a friend say? Like, what's the thing I first think of when I'm like, I fail? Like, what's the first thought? I would start to like take those things captive. Like, okay, how is this? And then because in that moment, it was opposite of what I had been brought up to do, of course. And so I'm like, okay, this doesn't line up with what I know is right. Because I knew it was right, but I wasn't doing it. So there's things that kind of shaped and molded me, but it's the belief system kind of my parents instilled in me. But it was a constant thing of whenever something would happen, whatever circumstance would happen, or whenever I'd walk through something, they would shine a light and be like, oh, okay, like they would show me how to view it. Yeah. Because when you're young, it's all emotion. Right? It's so emotional, and so what I've learned over time is if we let emotions lead, we'll have a life that's up and down because we just don't know. Like, they're fleeting and they're coming. Like, emotions are great, but we have to know where we're going and use them to our advantage. Right. And so, for me, I have to say it's a lot to do with my parents and how I was raised.
That's awesome. Well, and one thing too, just listening to you say all that, like you kind of touched on it with like the present, but I was even going to mention this back when you were talking about those dark days that you faced when you came back from college, you were hurt, you didn't think you had a shot with the NFL. One thing you said was that you were recollecting all the things that people have instilled in you and the investment, like you said. But what you took was a stance of like gratitude, and you even said you were thankful. So maybe elaborate more on that, like how, again, making it to real life situations, like how important is it to be grateful, even if you only have a roof, even if you only have one pair of clothes, like how important is it to be grateful for what you do have to move forward?
No, that's fascinating you say that, because that's literally almost phrased perfectly, identically what I would say. I would be like, I know I don't have this, but I would ask the question, what do I have? Right? Because in that moment, for me, when I lost that dream, lost the girl, I lost like the dream of what I want to do outside of football, like in a sense, I was like, I don't have anything. Like, that would be my answer. And that was the story I'd tell myself. And like, I'll go on the stories, like that was another thing I discovered, like stories I told myself, and it shaped my belief systems. And so if we change the story, we can change the actual physical story. But like, if, for example, if I walk into a situation and something happens, I create a story based on that person. It's like the judgment game in a sense, but we create about life and circumstances. So for me, that story had to shift, and I had to ask myself, like you said, how did I get to this point, and why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? In the sense that if I don't address those things, then I'll naturally kind of shift into just this downward spiral at that point. And then remind me exactly how you asked the question. I want to make sure I hit it right.
Or just how important
the gratitude
is towards moving forward when you're kind of at rock bottom.
Right. And so for me, it was, okay, what can I be, like, what do I have? Because I was going through all the things I didn't have. Yeah. And so I had to shift it of like, okay, I have a bed I can sleep in. Like that simple. I have shoes to wear. I actually have a couple pairs of shoes. Like, I started there. I have food to eat every single day. And then the thing about that is when we start from the bottom and you're trying to build your way back up, it's you have to literally go, I mean, that's what it was. It was like I built momentum. You start building momentum. Okay, well, I have this. I have clean water. I have a desk. I have a car. I have gas. I mean, like you start building it up to bigger and bigger things, and you realize, really, it's not necessarily that as bad as I thought. Like, and so we start to view things that way, and the things obviously get bigger and more broad to the point of like, okay, like I know this is not where I want to be, and I'm not discrediting that. Like I can't just be like, okay, I'm not looking at it. I'm not looking and see, like I know this thing's still here. I'm not like convincing myself of something that's not true. But at the same time, I'm convinced, I'm showing myself of what it actually is. Yeah. And there may only be 2 things, but at least I found 2, because then I can have another one and another one and another one. And that's kind of how it all started. Is I had to start from that place, because the thing about like being grateful, you can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. You can't be grateful and angry at the same time. And you can't, those certain things can't happen simultaneously. Yep. And so once I realized that, the anger would leave, because I'd be grateful. I'm like, oh, you can't be happy and sad necessarily at the same time. You have to pick one. Right. And so that's kind of, it just shaped how I started going throughout the days, because I started to see a positive light in each thing. And so then that comes on the mindset. It's a natural thing that starts occurring to where, okay, I saw it and like, oh, I got to bed. Well, then when I'd look at my circumstance that wasn't how I wanted it, I'd find the little light within that. That's awesome. Like, oh, like I do have a connection. Like I started finding the little pieces within the big picture. And so it was just a trained, because the thing that mind does, it's called the, I think it's RAS or something, reticular activating system. And so, have you heard of it? Mm-mm. So the reticular activating system is what you focus on, or what seems, you focus on it because it's relevant to you. So for example, if you buy a car, or you had like a girlfriend that had a red car. Yeah. Now, as soon as you buy the car, you start seeing all the red cars. Right. Right. And so it's the same idea, is because our mind, the way it works is we focus, it's constantly trying to solve the answer, solve the question. And so it's pattern recognition. Exactly. Yeah. So we start to recognize things based on what we focus on. So it's like the thing that Tony Robbins says all the time is like where your energy, where your focus goes, your energy flows. Yeah. It's the same idea of, okay, well, if I'm putting my focus here on all the negative stuff, well, then I'm going to constantly get more negative. Yep. But as soon as I switch that, the same thing happens. But so it's just that initial step, and then it starts moving, the momentum starts shifting. Yep. You start to find a lot more things that way. Yeah, that's good. So hard though when people are in it, you know, it's a battle. It's a fight. It is. It really is. It's being consistent with just the little stuff, because then it starts to get bigger, and then you start to see, because like going back to what I said earlier, you have to shape or create the environment that you want mentally as well as physically, right? And so, but you can do that a lot of times. You have to start mentally, right? Because sometimes the physical can't change yet. Like it's out of your control. But if you can constantly move in that direction and kind of work on those things, then it starts to change over time. But if we spend so much time thinking about the problem instead of how we can solve it, we have no chance. Yep. And so speaking on, I guess, a little bit of that segues into it, is I tell like high school kids, even college kids, we were like in the gaming world, right? So like we grew up playing games. And so I give this analogy because it makes a lot of sense to some of these kids, is they'll spend hours and hours on 2K, like NBA 2K, right? And so they have like the My Player, and like the customize the dude that looks just like them. You know, they spend so much time on them, and they go to practice, they have like the weightlifting, like 100 shots, like, dude, my guy's getting so good, right? The whole thing, right? And so it's fun because you're building on something, and it's the thing about progress equals happiness in a lot of ways, right? So if we're progressing, we're moving towards something, we have a sense of urgency and a sense of purpose and reality. And so for that's where they shift it. And so the easiest way, that first step, is to make it external, or instead of making it personal. Right. And so what we'll do is there, and plus in a game you kind of speed quick. Like you can get to your guy from 60 to 80 in like 2 weeks. Yeah. Like in real life that never happens. No. Right. So you can speed up the process. So what I show them is like, if you were to spin and have the same focus you do have with the guy in the game, like if you pick, that's actually you. Like you have a set of attributes. Like do things that increase the attributes in your life. Yeah. And so, you know what I mean? So they get to see like, oh, I am the My Player. Like, so instead of shifting, make it a game. Right, exactly. Like make it a game to like, oh, I'm constantly growing myself in this, because that's the whole point of playing the game. Yep. It's like, it's the fun of like, oh, like I'm growing, I'm getting better. I'm like, but like, why don't you do the same thing about like what you're doing in life? Because it doesn't happen as fast. Exactly, and it's harder. Yeah. Like you don't have to necessarily face the upfront. You don't really necessarily see it as much. Exactly, because you're in it every day. Right, and so when they get to see that, that example, like it kind of like, oh, like I kind of see how it relates, because it's just shifting the name of the category, like speed, to something else.
Right.
Like, and then finding your way the same way you would. If the hour, it takes time. And the thing about what we forget, and especially when you're younger, you don't necessarily understand, is things take work, right? We want things to be handed to us, even now, because it's so like you have access to anything, any point in time. So it's really easy to get information and really easy to kind of speed things up. But the thing about it is, like, if you want to be, because most people don't dream like, oh, like I just want to be, here's the guy that sits at the front desk. Like, you dream, I want to be the CEO. Right? Like most people do that, but we forget that if you were to ask those people, the CEO, like what it took, it still takes work.
Yeah.
And so there's just the little things that we have to remember. The time invested is so important.
Yeah, that's good. One thing that I always try to tell people is to not compare yourself to anyone else today, but compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And that's that game. Very true. Try each day to be a little bit better. That's the game. That's the game of life. I feel like if you can play that game, then the potential is exponential.
Right, because if you start running into like comparing yourself to others, you'll leave out a key ingredient, which is your uniqueness.
Right.
And as soon as you leave that out, then that's the actual separator.
Yeah.
In a sense, because you're like, oh, I'm not as good of a speaker as them. I'm not a whatever as them. Well, maybe your uniqueness is what attracts them.
Right.
Not necessarily like you could post.
Yeah.
Right, and so it's just viewing it negative, that's how you do things. But because comparison games is killer, right? And you see it all the time on social media, especially with a lot of girls I talk to. It's like, they have like 100 filters on there, and it's professional photo, looks nice. Like, of course it's gonna look good. If it looked bad, it'd be bad. Like,
Instagram is the biggest comparison fest.
Right, exactly. And so it's, so it's just, it all goes back to the stories you tell yourself and how you view it and the mindset. But
yeah, that's good. Last one. I've commonly tried to talk to dreamers. I feel like I have some pretty lofty dreams. Being a Division I athlete was one, and I accomplished it, and I'm addicted to dream making now. But I'm kind of getting away from that. I feel like it's a little too loose. It's a little too esoteric. So I'm more commonly trying to say visionaries. Like, what does it mean to be a visionary? And I would, maybe you don't identify as this, but I would say you're a visionary, man. Just to have the aim and you've reached the NFL, you've been there and you're still part of it. That's a part of being a visionary. That's something that, for people that aren't athletic or keep up with football, I think it's less than 3% of Division I college athletes get to do that. That's a very small number, and so I would say that classifies you as a visionary. I know you're a visionary in other ways too. You're ambitious, but just touch on what does it mean to you to be a visionary, and what are some, I don't want to say pitfalls, but I guess some challenges with that, because I know for me personally, being a visionary, a lot of times you're gonna have a lot of people that doubt you, a lot of people that might support you from afar, but don't ever really fully invest, because it's hey, you're chasing something invisible, you're chasing something imaginary, so it can feel like a lonely road. So I don't know if you can attest to that, because you mentioned a lot of family support, which is good. But anyway, just your takes on being a visionary and some challenges of that.
I think the first thing we have to remember is, with any amount of ambition, it's got to match your level of leisure time. Right? So if you have massive ambition, then you got to start restricting the leisure time. Right? So massive ambition, I want to be XYZ. Well, maybe you need to cut down some Netflix.
Yeah.
Right, so it's the practical side of things.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what we'll do is, these huge ambitions, but don't understand what it really takes to do it.
Right.
And then we'll be upset, hope deferred makes the heart sick. So as long as we're going through, I just want to be this, I just want to be this, and if we look at our life and I would never be able to reach it. The work's never going to be oh, check, you just got checked off the work, you don't have to do it. That never happens. And that's what I had to realize. For me, I thought I was if I'm just a good person, I'm going to get there. In a lot of ways, those can be a benefit to you, but the work is always going to be required no matter what. Right. And so with those big visions, those big things, you have to remember the work is going to be required. You're not going to get an exemption for it, right? And then secondly, it's lonely. You have to remember there's going to be moments where it's lonely, and that's where it's important to put people in your corner, whether it's accountability partners, mentors, people constantly pouring into you, because there's going to be the constant doubt of man, was that dream too big? I don't know if I'm going to make it. There was constant times with me, going through when I had to shift to go play away from receiver, because I knew I could play receiver, but it's just, and I was going to kicking. I was like, I haven't even spent much time. Can I make it? Like, I'm going to invest the next 5 years, like almost like career changing at an unmature age at like, 17, 18.
Right.
Trying to decide what I'm going to do. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a lonely decision, because now I'm the only, like, that's what you remember. All the blame or fault is going to come back to you.
Yep.
Right. And so you have to be able to understand that when you do that, when you have big visions, you go after those things, like, take it almost, not say personal, but take it to the point where it is personal enough to where it causes you to act.
Yeah, it's responsibility.
Right. Yeah. Because you know that, like, your name's on the door.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's your name's being the representative. It's like, if you had a company and you had to put your name on there, like, would you be living the life that represented that well right now? And I think, I guess, going with that vision piece is the backtrack, which I tell people whenever they have goals, is you have to envision it before it happens, right? And going to allude to what we talked about, I think before camera, maybe even of you, like, or even on camera, like snapping, whatever, like you see it before. So, or the games, being in the games.
Yeah. Dream about practice. Yeah,
exactly. So you have to envision it before it happens. What I mean by that is, many times we get caught like writing the goal and it's as if it's something off in the future. Right. Instead of like, okay, what does Tom Brady do now to make him great? Well, I got to replicate that right now, because he didn't just, when I reached the top, I just clicked all these things, I'm doing all of them. No, he's been doing them for years. Now he's just getting in the limelight so you see it. Yep. So we forget, like, what got people there is not necessarily, they just didn't start doing it once they got famous or once they started excelling. Like, they've been doing it since they were young kids. Like, if you look at Tom Brady, the way he trained as a kid, it's the same way. He's hard work ethic. Like, that's where it was. Yep. That's the only way they can get there. And so we think, I feel like, something a lot of kids I talk to, a lot of people I talk to is, well, I'll do it when I get there. But the problem is, if you have that mentality, you're never going to get there. Right? And so it's just, especially, and I always say that because, especially with the people with big visions, like, I don't say that in a way to people that maybe, because some people don't have like huge ambitions, and that's totally fine. Yep. But for the people that do, that's what I tell them is like, okay, then if you got to be true to your word. Like, if that's what you want to do, research that person. What does it take to get there? What does it take to stay there? Yeah. Because it would be awful to make it and then not stay. Right. Like, that would it would suck. So it's just the focus of being truly committed. If you have big visions, big goals, big aspirations, then back it up with your actions, your words of like, I know what it's going to take. It takes research in a sense. When I set hours and hours of film of watching what these guys did, how they stretched, how much time they worked out, how many days a week I did all that on the off time, just to make sure, like, okay, if they're doing that and performing at a high level, there's certain keys to success. Yeah. Like, no matter what field you're in, there's certain things or principles that allow them to perform that level. So it's about taking those and using them, and to your advantage, earlier the better, of course. Yeah. And so that's kind of what especially with big visions and big dreams is, man, use that stuff to your advantage. Especially the day and age with, we look it up on our phone. Like, hey, how are the workouts? Like, I can find them. Before you couldn't do that. I know. So you can use all that stuff to your advantage. Especially, like I said, big visions, big dreams, which I believe I probably am. But that's the hard part is it's almost like you're never done if you're visionary, right? Yep. It's like you reach one, it's like, okay, well, what's the next thing? It's like that's what gives me excitement. It's like I'm working towards something that's big, and I know it's going to take time, because it sucks too, because it's like, what if I don't reach it? I just wasted all this time. Like, that's the question you always have of like, well, if it wasn't worth it, like, that's the question, right? Yeah. But the excitement of going after, like, I'm going after this is what's like, okay, I got to work. I know I got to do this. And so I guess that's the constant battle of the doubt of, is it too big? Right. Or is it big enough? Yeah. Right. And it's one of those.
I think something else to throw in that mix as part of the battle is finding time to be content for people like us, people that are ambitious or visionaries. It's cool to be fueled by chasing that dream, and I get that. But there's also time, I feel like, naturally to just kind of slow down and relax and enjoy what you have. And I feel like that might be a challenge, part of it.
For sure. I think the first point I feel like is for people that have ambitions is to have I wouldn't say source, but to constantly focus on empathy especially not just for yourself, but for everybody else. Yeah. Because a lot of times you can get arrogant of like, oh, you're not doing enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like that question of, well, I'm going after all these. Well, maybe that's not what they want to do. So having empathy, because I was not always in the point that I am now. Yeah. Like if I would have said it to myself back when I was younger, it was not the same. Yeah. So we even though they may not be ambitious now, doesn't mean they can't be. Right. Right. And so just having empathy on that point and where they are in life, and then secondly, celebration is crucial. And I was not good at this, and I still struggle with it because I'm a constant goer. I'm like, okay, almost like the checklist, got it, cool, I reached the goal, what's the next one? Like, I want to be doing something because I know my time is limited. I want to make the most of it. But at the same time too, I got to enjoy like what's around me, friends, family, like just experiences, because it's fleeting, one. So like, it's a beautiful place here. Like, there's a lot of cool things we can do. And if we just check all the boxes off and have our head down, we don't get to experience what we're working so hard for. Yeah. Because a lot of times what we'll do is we'll work so hard for the goal, and then we reach it and we're like, man, like, I wish I could do it all again because I wish I could experience it. Right. And you only hear that from people that did it, and they look back as regret. Yep. And regret's one of the worst things you can have, because it's just one of those things that you can never get back again. It's time, really, and experiences. So, I mean, making the most of it, because even when I was younger, and I say I wasn't good at it, my mom used to harp on me all the time, even just in sports. Like, if we lost or we won or whatever, it's like, why are you upset? Like, I'm thinking about like the next game or how I can improve. Like, it's like, why don't you just enjoy the win? I was like, because it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, the whole point was to do this. Now I'm on to, I got to keep doing it if I want to be good, right? And so it was, but you can have a mix of both. It's not one end of the spectrum or the other. Right? You can kind of have that balance in the middle of, okay, like, I got to be focused because that's what it's going to take. But I can take a moment just to celebrate what's happened, or I can celebrate what I've been able to accomplish or do, or take a moment to, okay, I'm just going to sit on the couch for a second with family. Like, you have to have those moments. Now, for me, it's bad because I have to schedule it in my calendar of like, okay, I got to do this. I'm going out for an hour just to hang out and chill and not think about anything else. But sometimes we have to do that, and because we get caught, like, okay, what's next? What can I do? Like, because I'm a very strict, like, you look at my phone, I got it down to like the minute as far as the calendar. So it's like, if that's how I'm always thinking, like, for me, I got to be like, okay, hour, don't think about anything. It's on my phone. It's like, oh, okay, relax, don't think about anything else. What's next? Like, just be present. Because I feel like a lot of times with people that are very ambitious or have big visions is they struggle with being present. Like, one good friend of mine says, be present where your feet are. And that's kind of a slogan I try to live by in those moments of wherever I'm at. Because that's the thing, like, if you have such big ambitions to do something crazy, usually it's involving other people and wanting to impact people, right? But it's fascinating that if you were to look at that and understand that from there and track back here, like, you're impacting those people right now. So it's almost like you're not answering the call that you really are after. Like, I want to make it here so I can impact people. Well, but you have a platform right now that you can impact people as you go. But we forget that we're not just going to naturally change ourselves once we reach that place. It's going to be like, you have to practice that, right? It's the whole thing of like, I'm going to be disciplined when I reach my goal. Well, that's not how it works, right? You don't just, I'm going to be disciplined in a sense. Like, this thing is in all reality, like, being present and impacting people where you are is what's going to get you to this level, right? We think we're going to jump here and then impact people back down. That's not really how it works. Right. But in our mind, it's the easy way out. Like, it's all about comfort in all reality of, we seek to stay within our comfort zones, right? And so in doing that, we cripple ourselves in a lot of ways by, one, like addressing with fear and things like that, but we make the easy road out. We choose the road that's kind of just least resistant. And that's usually like, oh, we put the goal out here, and the problem with that is it's out here. We don't have to address the real issues right now. And so with that, what we'll do is we'll push it out and like, okay, not right now, I need to deal with those emotions, I don't need to deal with that right now. But in reality, that we're just pushing the extension until that comes to that point where it's like, well, that's past due, like, I can't really do that anymore, and then we have to deal with all those emotions at once. And it's really hard. And so, but we do that because it's kind of like procrastinating of dealing with what really matters and what we need to do. And so that's why I tell people all the time is like, with the old, like, because you have like SMART goals, right? And you've heard of that, and it's be specific, measurable, all that kind of stuff. And so we'll write a goal and we'll put it at the very end. And like, okay, I'm reaching that point. And when we do that, we sabotage ourselves to believing that we're going to become it once we get there, instead of backtracking it.
Yeah, it's kind of picked up along the way. That's good. Well, dude, that's good, man. I think that's perfect. That's good. I just, in closing, where can we get more of you? What's the best way to follow you?
Best way is probably Instagram at tsymm, at TSYMM. On Instagram, do Facebook, but I do most of my stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, I know you have a lot of motivational stuff on there. So if you guys want more inspiration from Mr. Symmank, Mr. Taylor, you can get that from there. Thanks, dude. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely, man.
If you guys enjoyed it, please give it a like and a share below. Let someone else know about it. Comment as well what you guys think. And as always, a subscribe goes a long way. I appreciate you guys stopping by, and I'll see you soon.